one of the readings is clearly the powerless will want power, especially once they specifically define the ways they have systematically been robbed of it. Okay, so the life and time, I did the documentary The Life and Times of Rosie the Riveter. It's directed by Connie Fields in 1980. It is a documentary film about women going into factories and different laborious jobs of such during World War II, when there was a demand for workers in previously male-dominated fields. The demand for female workers in these jobs was as a result of so many men being deployed overseas for the war. The film came about when Connie was working at Sin Manifest in San Francisco, I think it was, and one of the group members found out about Rosie the Riveter reunion and handed the information over to her, and that's how the documentary kind of got started. So this is the filmmaker. Rosie the Riveter was officially Connie's first film. She also did such films like Freedom on My Mind and a series of documentaries to destroy apartheid in South Africa called Have You Heard from Johannesburg? Connie's filmmaking has deep roots in social and political stories and themes, even quoting the phrase from the documentary that we watched earlier, the personal is political. And she believes that individual stories could tell a much greater social issue in a country. The awards some of the awards, because Rosie the Riveter won many, what I have listed here: Best Documentary Feature nominee, British Academy of Film and Television Arts, John Grierson Award, and so on. These are the 5 main subjects in the documentary: Lynn, Juanita, Gladys, Lola, and Margaret. They chose 3 predominantly black females and 2 white ones. She went through a massive interview process with hundreds of women and eventually narrowed it down until she reached these 5. The documentary was very well organized and well done. The images, video, interviews, and music was very deliberately used throughout the film and was very clearly structured and laid out for the audience. It was an interview-driven documentary which focused on women and their stories in relation to the society at the time through images and videos intercut between the interviews. This is a common trend in feminist documentary filmmaking. According to the reading, many of the films were targeted towards women predominantly and their issues. The feminist documentaries were usually very straightforward and linear. The filmmakers wanted to make sure that they could be shown in libraries and schools and just basically anywhere where they could reach a mass of people, and primarily women, so that the message and their issues could reach them. The documentary starts off very much kind of like a family sitcom. It has that kind of fun music. It stops on the screen with the images of the women and shows their name. I thought that was very intentionally done, because where the documentary is targeted is towards women, and traditionally you would assume that they're rural house to be watching these type of sitcoms, and I thought it was a play on that. Then it very quickly goes from showing what commercial versus reality and how the women in the film and advertisements were portrayed versus the real women being interviewed and telling their stories. In a lot of the advertisements or the films, the women were very prim, proper. As much as they were a little dirty, they were always well put together. And then we saw the real pictures of the women and the real women themselves, and it brought a nice contrast to that. Throughout the documentary, we would see very well. And then the film targets many areas. It's very hard to hit all of them within a 5 to 8 minute presentation. But one of the main issues, gender inequalities and biases, and race inequalities and biases. I'm going to show a clip which I thought was really interesting, because it struck me as how race and prejudice works in society, and when handled correctly, how it could develop even better than if we ignore it or play at it.
They come out from work looking like business girls on vacation, really. we were surprised to know there was a shower in there, so one of the black women went up. So when she went up there to take a shower, she said, well, I'm going up there. And we said, okay, we'll be up a little later. So when next thing we know, it was a whole lot of confusion. They got up there and the matron was up there and telling her to come out of there and get out of there fast. And she says, why? She says, you're not supposed to be in there. And she says, that woman, those other women are in there taking a shower. She says, well, I don't care who's in there. You're not supposed to be in there. And she said, if you don't come out, we'll get the guard. So we tried to talk her out. We didn't want to see her lose her job. And she said, no, I'm not coming out. She says, as long as they got showers in here and those women are using them, I'm using them too. So they closed the showers down. And so then a lot of them decided not to work with us, period. So the union steward sent to Local 600 and they sent a representative. He asked them what was the matter. Well, they didn't want to talk to him because he was black and they was waiting for somebody else to come. He says, I'm all that's going to be here. So all I want to know is what's wrong. And he said, we're not going to work with those women. He said, what women? And they said, those, well, he didn't say black then. They said, well, those colored women. And he says, why don't you want to work with those colored women? And they said, we just don't want to. He said, well, do you want the jobs? They said, yeah, we want the job. He says, okay, then you go to work. If you don't want the jobs, just turn in your time. That's all you can do. We'll get somebody that does want to work with them. So after that, well, they went on back to work, and they eventually got over it. So we started working after that. Of course, after we worked a while and got used to each other, then we laugh about those things.
I thought that was a very interesting thing, and especially a little angering that say we laugh about these type of things, but it also could be a key point to remember in life, because luckily in this case things were handled properly, and because of that some biases and some prejudice were allowed to be overcome by getting to know people apart from what their color is or what their sex is. And I wanted to show this one specifically because there were so many of the other stories in the documentary where it didn't work out well, and some where it did, and I just thought that was a key point to kind of note. Also in the film, a lot of propaganda. Well, the film itself, maybe propaganda depending on your opinion of what propaganda is, but intercut with what the women were and what the experience as a woman versus what was being advertised to the women was shocking and very angering, I would hope, for everyone. The film is shown seems to uplift women, but only really in relation to men. It pushed women to fight and work for the cause, even going so far as to guilt women into feeling this was their duty. There's a few clips in there that's they made women feel guilty for basically, let's say, killing the men because you can't half die, because women may not have had the time to devote all of their efforts into producing these war machines or whatever for them. And not that any of the women really needed much pulling. Women of the time wanted something, they wanted purpose, and they also they wanted to be paid more. So them going into the factories was not as much as an effort for them as people would assume. But however, women were still responsible for doing the same work as men, getting paid less and taking care of the household duties, which was a heavy strain on them. After the war, however, the films took a drastic turn, and the films began to once again push women into what they considered their natural roles, which was kind of confusing for the women at the time, because first you push them into something that they feel unpatriotic if they don't, and then all of a sudden it's push them back into the motherly roles, and you are unpatriotic to your country if you do these things. So in the end of the documentary, one of the women says she doesn't wish for the war again, but how they all loved each other, and she would like that feeling back. So two questions to kind of think about is, why did it take a war for the US to put things in place to provide that type of work and education for all its people? And another question I would like to raise is, does Trinidad and Tobago, in your opinion, lack any social or political areas that you think this film targeted?